Hey, greetings everyone. It is GleeCon and I am back again. Welcome. I am bringing you another episode of Lore of Warcraft today. On our last episode, we ran around with the Barrens with our Orcish warrior. Still tanking it along. We did the North Watch Hold stuff. A lot of green quests for him now that he's beaten Wailing Caverns. Finishing up the Northern Barrens stuff is definitely easier. He also did the Venture Co mines, and he is getting closer to moving on to the southern part of the Barrens, where he'll start being on his own not too much longer because he is not going to he he's going to finish all of the Barons, and he's the only one. We have probably one more set, one or two more, and then Talanji's going to move on to Ashenvale, and then we have another um, probably one or two sets after that, and then our druid or our shaman is going to move on to Stone Talon. So his friends are going to move off, and then it will just be with him as he finishes out the zone. So that'd be pretty fun. Um, we've also been reading the Monster Guide, the penultimate book of the Dungeons and Dragons World of Warcraft campaign setting. And we finished the entire Monster Guide A to Z, but there's still some things at the end. What we're going to do today, if you want to stay a while and listen, we're going to um, do the elite creatures. They have some kind of raid boss, dungeon boss type of mobs that we're going to talk about here at the end. And then we'll have one more episode as we wrap up all of the appendices and rules and online resources for just random creatures. All right, so it says that owing to their unique status, a number of the villains contained in this chapter have a number of special attacks and qualities beyond those of a common specimen of their race and class. So we're going to begin with Arcadis, who is a stone guardian of the vault. He's probably from what is it? Not Uldum, Ulduar or something like that. Arcadis is one of the ancient servants, Uldaman. I always get all those Uls mixed up. Ancient servants of the Titans, a giant of stone crafted to guard the vault of Uldaman. To ensure he would always be vigilant, his creators sealed him in a stone shell that keeps him magically preserved in a timeless sleep. Any attempt to activate the keystone that opens the vault awakens him immediately. Should the creatures not speak the appropriate command words at once, Arcadis carries out his orders and destroys the invaders before returning to sleep once again. Sadly, the command words have been lost to the ages, so anyone who awakens him almost certainly finds himself engaged in battle. Arcadis stands 18 feet high and weighs 12,000 pounds of solid stone. He can speak Dwarven and Titan fluently, but sees no need to do so except when commanding a statue to life. The stone cracks and shatters, and an immense giant with craggy features steps forth. He wears an ornate breastplate and wields a sword almost as tall as its frame, about the height of 3 sturdy humans, even though its picture has a hammer. Arcadis strikes with his massive greatsword at whoever released him, throwing stones, usually fragments of the ruins of Uldaman, only at opponents who can fly or otherwise elude him. He targets what he considers to be the most dangerous foe, the one who's generating the most threat, usually the one who dealt him the most damage in previous rounds. He calls on other stone guardians as often as possible, and he can do so with animate stone, so he animates the stone statues around him. He has the rock throwing. He has a stone burst where he stomps the ground and it does AoE damage around him. If anyone decides to throw rocks back at him, he can catch it and throw it back. He also has the toughness of Arcadis, giving him a massive, almost 200 extra hit points, and his weapon is a huge +4 axiomatic greatsword and a +3 breastplate, along with the key to the Vault of Uldaman itself. He has a challenge rating 13. And then he has animated statues of Arcadis. They don't really describe them or even give them a challenge rating. I guess they're just contained within his challenge rating. Okay. Balnazar, aka Sidon Dathrahan. I forgot that Balnazar was Sadon, champion of the Scarlet Crusade. I wonder which came first. I think Sadon, or Sidon, however you want to say it, Sadon was one of the original paladins, if you remember from how the Order of the Silver Hand was formed. And I guess he's just possessed by Balnazar now. was one of the 3 Nathrazim siblings left behind in Kalimdor to oversee the demonic conquest of that land. The return of Prince Arthas following the defeat of Archimonde sent the 3 brothers packing. But they quickly regrouped and concocted a new plan to destroy Arthas once and for all. Though they and Sylvanas Windrunner, who attacked Arthas on her own terms, didn't destroy Arthas, the undead prince left Lordaeron, leaving Balnazzar to rule the land now known as the Plague Lands. Unfortunately for Balnazzar, Sylvanas had plans of her own and laid siege to Lordaeron. She had defeated Balnazzar's brother Varimathras, who offered to serve her in exchange for his life. Sylvanas accepted, and the Dreadlord fought at her side in the attack on Lordaeron. And in the battle, she ordered Varimathras to finish off his sibling. He grudgingly agreed and apparently slew Balnazzar. However, Balnazzar survived. He faked his death and fooled both Sylvanas and his brother. To remain hidden, Balnazzar went underground. Not content to simply sit by while the undead legions overran Azeroth, he formed a new plan to oppose them. He possessed the body of the paladin Saidan Dathrahan, who then helped found the Scarlet Crusade, an order of knights focused on the singular goal of defeating the Scourge in all its forms. No one in the Crusade is aware that Dathran is a demon. They simply believe him to be a holy knight obsessed with the destruction of the undead. Balnazzar uses this fact to his advantage as much as possible, intending not only to defeat the undead, but one day secure his hold on Lordaeron once again. And because of their single-minded zealotry, that means they also want to kill all Forsaken. To maintain his charade, Balnazzar kept and still keeps a low profile, letting others run the Scarlet Crusade. At present, Balnazzar dwells within the Scarlet Crusade stronghold in the besieged ruins of Strathholm, in the deepest reaches of the Eastern Plaguelands. The Scourge and the Crusade remain locked in battle at a stalemate, primarily because Balnazzar depends upon his masquerade for his long-term plans. His agents actively recruit new members for the Crusade, and his ranks grow steadily. Should anyone find out his true nature, however, the Scarlet Crusade could potentially fall apart overnight, and the undead would become the only power in the Plaguelands. It does not. He's a challenge rating 21. The hulking demon's skin is a waxy purple, save the black bat-like wings. Its eyes glow crimson as it raises its massive greatsword. Balnazzar attempts to remain in his possessed form as long as possible, not revealing his true nature until absolutely forced to do so. He avoids using spells or spell-like abilities unless they could be paladin spells, or he can do so in a way that makes them look like they came from a magic item. Typically doing so requires a bluff check. He avoids direct combat, preferring to let his minions do the fighting for him. If cornered and sorely pressed, he reveals his true nature, abandoning his possessed body and emerging in all his glory. At this point, he lets loose with all the firepower at his command, subduing and then destroying his enemies with demonic fury. Any allies who remain by his side are then slain in turn so that he may preserve his secret, and he returns to his former body to maintain the masquerade. If his secret is openly revealed, he retreats, seeking vengeance on those responsible at some future time. That would be like a campaign thing. Also, if you are curious about this, the Scarlet Crusade, we haven't read too much lore about it because there just isn't a ton. But there's that comic we read, The Ashbringer. If you didn't check out those episodes, I strongly recommend them. It's it's probably the best comic series that we've read on this show so far, and it's pretty cool. With the info that we have now, I'm tempted to go back and reread it myself just for personal pleasure, because a lot of it would even make more sense now that I know who some of the main players are. He can dominate anything. He drains energy to give you negative levels. He can also possess, which is what he's done to Saidan. He has a sleep aura. Those around him just can fall asleep if they're not careful. He does have spell-like abilities. Like we said, he has to hide them or pretend that they're from his magical items, like Deeper Darkness, Nightmare. And he can cast a full suite of high-level necromancer spells. He also can summon an infernal once per day, just smash it down from the heavens. And he has a vampiric aura to go along with his sleep aura. And when his possessions are all of Saidan's, so a +4 unholy greatsword of wounding that's tied to his own life force. So if someone tries to use it, they drop 4 levels. And he also has a +5 ring of protection and braces of armor +5. So he gets 10 extra armor class on top of his armor, which is probably contributing to his armor class of 39. Whoa, that's a pretty tough dude. All right, Baron Geddon, he's familiar. A lot of you that play WoW probably have seen this guy. Baron Geddon is one of the eldest of all fire elementals, and he served as Ragnaros' right hand during the beginning of the war against the Titans. During one of the first battles against the then unknown Titan attackers, Geddon was defeated and forced into humiliating retreat. Ragnaros immediately demoted his commander, thinking that Geddon had been defeated by an inferior foe, since the old gods and their lieutenants had never yet met a challenge. His replacement was the Flamewalker Majordomo Executus. Geddon was infuriated that a creature not purely of fire replaced him, a noble among the elementals. I think that Majordomo is like one of those salamander guys. But these are all like Molten Core, Blackrock Spire type bosses. In an effort to regain his master's faith, Baron Geddon planned the now legendary betrayal of Thunderon, the Windseeker. Is that the guy that has that sword that everyone is famous to everyone? In the midst of a great battle, Geddon separated the massive lightning elemental from his allies, and together with Gar, and it's QV, I believe that's Latin for, we're going to get to that later, and Ragnaros, they ambushed the great elemental in an effort to steal his power. Thunderon was a powerful foe, even to an elemental lieutenant such as Ragnaros, and the Fire Lord was unable to completely destroy him as he had hoped. The three did manage to seal the Windseeker away, however, and imprison his essence in the talisman known as the Bindings of the Windseeker. Ragnaros then broke the talisman in half and charged each of his lieutenants, Gar and Geddon, with keeping one half safe. It is said that if the halves are brought together again, then Thunderon might escape. However, Geddon did not win back his old position by his master's side. Today, he waits and bides his time, hoping to grow strong enough to find a way to overthrow or discredit Majordomo Executus. Baron Geddon currently dwells in the tunnels of the molten core of Blackrock Mountain, where he keeps a tireless vigil against intruders. Both Baron Geddon and Gar draw their considerable might from the blazing runes carved deep into the floor of the molten core. Villain points 6. Interesting. I don't even remember what those are. Maybe they'll talk about that at the end, or I just missed it because it's a stat thing. Challenge rating 25. Tough dude. A vaguely humanoid upper torso composed of pure flames is bound at what might be its wrists by two thick metal bracers. The lower portion of its body is a whirlwind of spinning flames that barely touch the ground. Baron Geddon opens combat using Ignite Mana on any obvious powerful spellcaster, those he presumes have 9th level spells. He continues doing so until forced into melee, or until every powerful spellcaster is under the influence of Ignite Mana. Baron Geddon then uses Inferno to drive away nearby attackers to the presumably safe distance of 90 feet. That's oddly specific. He uses Living Bomb on anything he can target until once again engaged in melee. Baron Geddon stays mobile, moving around with Spring Attack to keep his foes from bringing all of their melee to bear on him. He repeats the cycle, Inferno, Living Bomb, and melee, whenever his foes get too close. He refreshes Ignite Mana when he suspects it has been dispelled. They're basically describing the mechanics of these like elite dungeon and raid bosses. His burn, just they catch fire and it's very hard to dodge. Ignite Mana. He ignites them and they lose their spells. He's literally burning away their spell slots. He does have an Inferno that he can shoot down, and the Living Bomb, if it's not dispelled, they blow up and everyone around them takes damage, including themselves. He does have those Shackles of Ragnaros, which not only do they stop him from being weak like most elementals, but they actually make him stronger. And he has half of the bindings of the Windseeker, or the Talisman of Elemental Binding, which is in a previous book. All right, another Baron, Baron Rivendare, Death Knight of Stratholme. Once Baron Rivendare was a wealthy Lordaeron landowner and friend of Kel'Thuzad. He fell under the Necromancer's sway and helped build and structure the Cult of the Damned. Rivendare then achieved the title and powers of Death Knight. Now Rivendare has his base in Stratholme. He serves Kel'Thuzad eagerly and exults in his power. I kind of feel like he's the boss of one of the wings. One of his greatest joys is to instill corruption in others, especially paladins, and most especially members of the Argent Dawn. He's a challenge rating 22. Evil bloke. This knight is a regal figure. His face is pale but aristocratic, and white hair hangs from his shoulders, while a scarf covers his face. He crouches over a horned skeletal steed, and purple runes glitter across his black armor, cloak, and greatsword. Baron Rivendare excels at melee combat, especially mounted warfare, and he knows it. At the earliest possible moment, he charges, whether afoot or mounted on his skeletal horse Death Charger. Then the Baron unleashes the dreadful power of the Runeblade. He prefers to fight with created undead to support him, and he uses Death Pact on these to recover hit points. Rivendare enjoys testing his mettle against fellow close combat specialists, but strikes at arcanists and healers if they prove bothersome. He has alabaster skin, which gives him extra armor, and a dark grace, which gives him advantage on charisma saving throws. He has some spell-like abilities, specifically Death Pact, I'm guessing, to gain undead minions, and the undead minions are his other power. He's undying, so death spells don't work on him. He has an unholy strike, so he does extra negative energy damage with his attacks. He also uses a +6 Keen Frost Unholy Bastard Sword that is a vampiric rune blade that gives him extra resistances to saving throws, and he can use it to blast cold damage at people. And so his possessions are that, a +5 full plate, belt of giant strength, belt of protection, and mithril spurs probably make you better at riding. Death Charger, his elite horse. I don't see anything about a challenge rating on that, but they do give stats for that. And he has mounted warrior stuff. Okay. Dracasath, general of Nefarian's armies. So maybe in the Nefarian raid, if you're fighting the dragons, you have to fight him to get to him. I don't know. I never really participated in that. They shut a lot of these things down. General Dracasath is the dragon spawn ruler of the armies of Nefarian, leader of the Black Dragon Flight. From the pinnacle of Blackrock Spire, he oversees his forces in their war to drive out the Dark Iron Dwarves from the bowels of the mountain. His ultimate goal is to drive his army into the depths in a climactic battle against Ragnaros the Fire Lord, all in the name of his master Nefarian. Dracasath is well known for his ruthlessness and total lack of quarter in combat. He shows no mercy and expects none in return. Although quite clearly evil, he commands respect from his troops primarily because when he gives his word, he keeps it. I think finding out these dragon spawn, these Scalebanes, I feel like I need more story into how they came into existence. He's a challenge rating 20 BT dubs. Oh, there's Gar that we were just talking about. This giant, scaly, four-legged dragon spawn is a mottled orange with dark red and brown stripes. He bears a large banner on his back, wears immaculate plate armor, and carries a scimitar. Dracasath would prefer to lead his armies directly, but understands his own importance and doesn't risk his life in meaningless encounters. Dracasath has a handful of special attacks and special qualities that set him apart from others of his kind, all granted to him by his draconic lords. If forced to join the fray, he maneuvers to a position where his flame burst ability won't affect any allies. Of course, he knows full well that red dragons and other red wormkin are immune to fire, and then lets loose with repeated blasts until his enemies are reduced to ash. He targets particularly troublesome foes with black conflagration. You would think that the black dragons were immune to fire too. Black conflagration, okay, it's a fire breath type of thing. It looks like it does fire damage, and sets things on fire. The flame burst, something he can do every 4 rounds. Exactly what it sounds like. Pierce armor, so he's good. If he devotes himself fully to melee, he can shred your armor. And he has +5 full plate, a +3 heavy steel shield, and in the other chapter that we'll get after this, they will describe the Black Blade of Shahram, which is his specific sword. Okay, Gar, this is Baron Geddon's partner, the guy that has the other half of the medallion. As one of the 2 chief lieutenants serving under Ragnaros, Gar plays a key role in the current success of the Fire Lord and his spreading influence. Gar, like Baron Geddon, holds half of Bindings of the Windseeker, which contains the remaining essence of Thunderon, Prince of Air. Tales say that after centuries of partnership, Geddon became suspicious of Gar and felt the elemental sought both halves of the talisman. Thus, relations between the 2 powers are strained. Both Gar and Baron Geddon draw their considerable might from the blazing runes carved deep into the floor of Molten Core. He's a challenge rating 25. He just looks like a rock elemental. But he's got fire, so maybe he's like a magma elemental. 2 orbs of molten lava are set into the hill of stone that constitutes the creature's head. The whole, resting atop a mountain, is torso. 2 immense bands of metal bind the creature at what might be its wrists, if those massive stone appendages could be called arms. Gar uses Earth Glide to rise up among the highest concentration of his enemies. He takes advantage of his magma shackles and anti-magic pulse by moving to keep his ground-based enemies within these areas of effect. Okay. He attacks and backs off to keep his opponents from making full attacks against him while his army of elementals surrounds and protects him. In melee, he simply pummels his foes and pushes them into rivers and lakes of lava. His impacting blow lets him crush through tanks. Lava Seer, he does extra damage from his attacks because he's got lava punches, and you also take damage just from hitting him. The magma shackles, what that's doing is making difficult terrain because it's magnifying the floor around him. He also pushes around so he can bull rush you into the lava. And his surge, he can engulf people when he can turn molten and then engulf them. Anti-magic pulse does what you would think. It basically just keeps dispelling all magic. And he has the shackles of Ragnaros. Those are his bracers. The Earth Glide lets him move around through that stone so he doesn't suffer the penalties from it. And the Bindings of the Windseeker, that's listed in another book, but his shackles, which buff him up, they're listed later on in this book. In the next episode we do. All right, old Kel'Thuzad, Lich Lord of the Plaguelands. I think he's the boss for next. Kel'Thuzad was one of the greatest Archmagi of Dalaran, but his passion for the dark arts of necromancy made him an outcast among his fellow Arcanists. Heeding the call of the Lich King, Kel'Thuzad traveled to Northrend and offered his soul to Ner'zhul. The Lich King commanded the necromancer to help him unleash the undead scourge upon humanity. Though Arthas later slew Kel'Thuzad, that same prince raised the necromancer as a lich after the Lich King captured Arthas' soul. Kel'Thuzad served as Arthas' most trusted advisor as the scourge annihilated the last traces of humanity in Lordaeron. When the Lich King called Arthas to Northrend to defend the Frozen Throne, Arthas left Kel'Thuzad to oversee the Lich King's army and the newly formed Plaguelands of the Scourge. Now Kel'Thuzad reigns over the Plaguelands from his necropolis of Naxxramas, floating in the sky above Stratholme. He speaks like every language. And that will be how we end Classic, is fighting him. When we go through that raid and fight Kel'Thuzad on camera, that will signal that World of Warcraft Classic is done, although we are a long way off from that. He's a level 38, challenge 38. This imposing skeletal figure is wreathed in frost and malice. Blue light shines out from an otherwise empty skull. The being is draped in rune-encrusted robes, with ice-covered ribcage hideously exposed. It wears ceremonial headdress on his skull reminiscent of the ancient Nerubian spider crowns of Northrend. The giant 7-foot frame levitates ominously above the ground, trailing a freezing cloud of frost. Several frost-rimmed chains wind loosely around the thing, floating in midair. Kel'Thuzad confuses and harasses his enemies by first summoning masses of undead. He blasts away with frost-based attacks from afar, letting his minions feast on the living. He raises slain creatures to fight for his side whenever the opportunity presents himself. He can prepare 18 spells per level. Wow. He has actually a special sidebar that he has developed a number of unique spells. He favors these spells above all others. Any hero that can defeat him might gain access to his spellbook. So in D&D terms, you could actually learn Kel'Thuzad spells. He has Detonate Mana, which is a level 10 spell. So I don't know, I guess you'd have to be like level 19, 20 to even try to use it. You alter the target's mana, causing a violent arcane reaction. After you cast a spell, they feel uncomfortable, their skin itches, and 1 round after, their mana detonates. When that happens, they lose all of their spell slots and explode. Everyone near them takes damage, and the more spells that you had, the more damage. So it would obliterate someone if it would hit a powerful mage. It's crazy. What's the saving throw? So that's what I'm trying to see, because it says look at the text. A will save for each unused spell slot in the highest and second highest spell levels. Okay, so you'd have to make multiple saves because it would be targeting your top spell. So it's extremely hard to save against this, basically, unless maybe if you're really good at saving throws. He has also Mass Dominate Person. That one I'm not going to read because it's probably just what it sounds like. Oh, crud. I did that. I did it again. Whoopsie, I did it again. I made me a blunder. It's like if you click... Oh, that's what it is. I'm clicking right there. He has Frost Blast. So that's like a mega powerful, damaging Frost Nova. Greater Frostbolt, Frostbolt Volley, and Shadow Fissure, which creates a fissure of shadow damage in the ground. He has Magical Study, so he can basically cast any Arcanist type of spell, mage spells, even just treating them, even though he's a Necromancer. And he has the Chains of Kel'Thuzad, along with his pouches and spellbooks. Okay, Lady Onyxia is the mistress of the Black Dragon Flight. Lady Onyxia is one of the eldest remaining black dragons and a daughter of Deathwing, the aspect of the Black Dragon Flight. After carefully calculating her plans for many years, she entered into a pact with her elder brother Nefarian to take over for their missing father and gain control of the entire flight. To this end, she has begun manipulating many mortals and dragons alike to her own ends. At present, Onyxia masquerades as one of the highest officials in Stormwind, preventing the people there from sending much-needed aid to the areas near the Burning Steppes, where her brother has great power and influence. Her own lair lies in Dustwell of Marsh on Kalimdor, and thus she always has a safe haven if someone discovers her in Stormwind. Oh man, her head gets chopped off all the time. Many suspect that Onyxia is connected to the disappearance of King Varian Rin of Stormwind, but this rumor has never been confirmed. She clearly has insidious plans for the human nation that go far beyond simply withholding the city's forces, however. Onyxia is quite possibly the one responsible for the prison breaks and the stockades. She is. But her motivation is as yet unclear. Well, actually, I don't know, because we haven't done the lore on that yet. Could be Defius. She speaks a lot of languages. Lady Onyxia, challenge rating 25, that's it. This tremendous dragon is jet black, massive yet sinuous. Her midnight scales reflect the ambient light brightly, making the beast look even more nightmarish. Onyxia initiates combat using her breath weapon and then moves directly into melee, preferably targeting soft targets, such as spellcasters. If given a chance to prepare before battle, she uses defensive spells to augment her fighting ability. When she is reduced to exactly 338 hit points or fewer, Onyxia takes to the air. If her opponents are hurting her slowly at this point, why that many hit points, by the way? I guess that's, I don't even know why. That's like, maybe that's 60%. 60% of 500 would be 300. 60% of, no, it's not. Not so I would, maybe it's 2/3, 66%. Yeah, it's exactly 2/3 of her life. If her opponents are hurting her slowly at this point, she prepares a deep breath so if she loses a third of her life, targeting the largest group of her foes, preferably all of them. If she's still sustaining a great deal of damage in the air, she sticks to spells to make sure she can retreat if badly wounded. So that means 112. Now if she loses another 130, so this is probably like if she's, when reduced to 208 hit points, so 35%, she either retreats if in open air or descends to the ground to re-enter melee if inside the lair. She attempts to land on her enemies and crush them. Actually, no, not 35%. I lied. She's 130. So 40% maybe of life. Or descends to the ground to re-enter melee if inside her lair. She attempts to land on her enemies and crush them as she comes down to the ground. When she reaches the ground, she immediately uses her breath weapon against the largest group of opponents within range. At this point, she fights to the death if necessary, retreating only if a chance presents itself. If engaged while in human form, she fights using spells unless her attackers clearly know she's a dragon. If her enemies know her identity, she tries to retreat to her lair. And she has these, she has even more spells than Kel'Thuzad, and she likes fire magic spells. She has breath weapon. She has the unique ability to just charge up her breath weapon, kind of like Kirby, and then shoot it all out. She does have some spell-like abilities in the form of some detecting thoughts and suggestion, typical magic dragon stuff. Magical nature. So she basically casts these spells as a mage. Her shadow scales mean that Shadow Flame doesn't do extra. And you know what? It's interesting because if you're playing retail right now, Shadow Flame is all what the current expansion is deeply tied into. This current raid boss, he's being corrupted or he's absorbing the powers of Shadow Flame. So I guess this is a big thing. It's kind of like fire mixed with old god magic or something. I don't know. She has water breathing and a ring of binding. Onyxia's lair is in a volcanic cave in Dustwallow Marsh. The floor of the main cavern is just solid enough that Onyxia can sit on it normally without cracking the floor and revealing the lava below. This is intentional. If seriously threatened, she shatters the floor, exposing the lava to further damage her enemies. That's like a raid phase. She has over 100 eggs in her clutch, but her mate is unknown. Uh-oh. Who's she getting freaky with? Lord Kazakh. No, not him. That's the next entry. Maybe. The Demon Lord Kazakh was one of Archimonde's lieutenants during the Third War. After his master's defeat, Kazakh pulled back. He and his forces now occupy a ravaged area in the Blasted Lands known as the Tainted Scar. Yeah, he's basically the guy that is like posted up at the Dark Portal. Kazakh is a mighty demon with great power, but he lacks independent initiative. Trapped within the Tainted Scar, he's completely cut off from contact with any other demonic forces on Azeroth. Even should such personages such as Balnazar become aware of his presence, they would likely as not avoid contact for fear of Kazakh's power. Kazakh's main goal, indeed his only goal, is to reopen the Dark Portal and return to Draenor, now the Shattered Realm of Outland. Whether he might then proclaim an intention to serve Illidan or raise an army to fight the Night Elf Betrayer remains to be seen. Okay. He's a challenge rating 23. The massive demon's skin is sickly yellow in color, and its reddish-black wings and horns glisten evilly in the light. The sword it wields glows with evil power. Unlike many demon leaders who tend to stay behind the lines and direct their minions against a foe, Lord Kazakh loves nothing more than to wade right into the heat of battle. There he shatters formations with his Shadow Storm ability, while laying waste to individual heroes with his mighty greatsword. As the battle enters its most critical phase, he flies into a rage, reveling in an orgy of destruction. I mean, he has a rage. The Mark of Kazakh means everybody that's not a demon near him gets afflicted by it if they don't save. And every time they fail the save, they get their spells drained. And if they lose more spells than they have, they take massive damage. Otherwise, this doesn't affect anyone that's not a spellcaster. He has a Doom Guard. Basically, he has a poison called Mortal Infection. And his Shadow Storm shoots shadow bolts everywhere. Look at him. And they just do fell damage, but it's weaker 66 damage, but it's AoE. He does have some spell-like abilities like Shadow Burn, Blasphemy. He can shoot Void Bolts out. A Twisted Reflection. He creates a black-blue shield. So while he has it active, it's basically absorbing any attack that would hit him. His hit points can't exceed their normal maximum. Oh, it heals him instead of hits him. Lasts for 5 rounds, and then after it drops, he basically it's going to take 3 to 9 more rounds before he can pop it up again. So while it's active, he can't really attack that much, and nothing else can heal him. So that sounds like a raid phase as well. We'll reflect on that when we actually fight these guys. He is also can be treated as a warrior. He also has a death drain. So when he kills people, he drains and gets temporary hit points. Mechgineer Sicko Thermoplug. Old Sicko. Mechgineer Thermoplug was once a brilliant and wise tinker. He's only challenge rating 12, because I guess it's just the Nomergon boss. Who, despite being incredibly frail, even at a young age, was destined to be High Tinker. He cunningly laid the way to the seat, charming people to his side and cranking out one great invention after the next. He worked unceasingly toward his goal, for Thermoplug planned on not only making High Tinker, but also becoming the gnome's first true king in over 400 years. He envisioned a great kingdom out of Nomergon, carved out of the entire western half of Dun Morog, even if it meant relocating the nearby dwarven communities in the name of progress. Nothing would stop him. However, his closest friend Gelban Mechatork ruined all of his goals when the Council of Tinkers decided that Thermoplug was too ambitious and chose Mechatork instead. Thermoplug's sanity broke that day, and he planned on gaining revenge over his friend. Though working on the system and through working the system and gaining favor among the intellectual elite, Thermoplug eventually won the seat of advisor to the High Tinker. It was his idea that during the Trog invasion, the gnomes shut themselves from the world. Thermoplug claimed that the world outside didn't need to be bothered by gnomish problems, for he had an idea that would both destroy the image of Mechatork and win him the throne. After weeks of debate, he convinced Mechatork to flood the halls of Gnomeregan with radiation via a bomb, thus killing the Trogs. If a few gnomes died in the process, he stated, it would be a worthy sacrifice for saving the entire race. However, due to reasons even Thermoplug can't remember, he found himself locked inside Gnomeregan when the bomb was released. Began. Weird. Despite his age and frailty, he did not die. Some speak that it was his ambition that saved him, while others say he hid and suffered the least of the poison. Despite this, he lived and mutated into a leper gnome. The radiation killed more gnomes than Trogs, and many other gnomes in Gnomeregan's walls also suffered from the radiation and became leper gnomes. However, in the ensuing chaos, Thermoplug has begun calling himself a king. To this day, he rules over the leper gnomes and continues fighting the Trogs. He controls. Oh, so he does fight against them. He controls his land with a tyrannical fist, destroying outsiders as rapidly as any other enemy. He keeps to himself most of his time since becoming king of Gnomeregan, working on insane world-conquering inventions. Thankfully, few, if any, will ever see the light of day. Paranoid beyond rational thought, Thermoplug destroys anything that disturbs his work, even his own leper gnome servants. Recently, however, he opened negotiations with the Dark Iron Dwarves, allowing them use of Gnomeregan's tunnels in exchange for a part of Ironforge to call his own. So he's also got Dark Irons within there. No one knows what may become of this alliance, but it won't be good. Crazed, this is him right here. I look at him in his suit, his little green face. A crazed, frail-looking leper gnome peers out from within a massive suit of steam-powered armor. He snickers maliciously, swinging the massive club-like right arm of his battlesuit. Thermoplug starts combat by sizing up his opponents, then charges. Thermoplug alternates between delivering awesome blow and bash feats with his steam fist and tearing his opponents to pieces with his slicer. He also stops occasionally to use his remote to activate various traps in his lair, summon constructs, or take control of an enemy's technological device. With his universal remote, and he has the battle armor and ever-burning furnace within the battle armor, so those they'll describe in that future chapter. Nefarian, or Lord Victor Nefarious, is our next one, the Lord of Blackrock Spire. Challenge rating 31. So is he weaker or stronger than his sister? Let's see. She is 20, so he's much stronger. Nefarian is one of the oldest and most powerful children of Deathwing, and he has recently succeeded where his father presumably failed. He has created a group of chromatic dragons. These dragons quickly grow in number, and with the help of his sister Onyxia, he plans to use them to rally the entire Black Dragonflight under his command. Is this like a Game of Thrones twincest thing going on here? With the Black Dragonflight once again under solid leadership, and with the support of these new chromatic dragons, he plans to strike back against the other dragonflights, as well as the mortal nations of the world. In addition, he hopes to soon gain enough power to take over the Blackrock depths beneath his fortress, where the weakened Fire Lord Ragnaros resides. While Nefarian fears he's not strong enough to confront the Fire Lord directly yet, he delights in capturing Ragnaros' elemental minions and using them for his own insidious purposes. The creature that looms before you is evil incarnate. Immense and pitch black with sword-like fangs and raven-hued fire in its breath, the massive dragon looks as if it stepped out of the worst nightmare of a raving mind that a raving mind could possibly conceive. Note the statistics here for Nefarian in his draconic form. Nefarian usually enters combat in human form at first, summoning his many minions and allies while he wears down his enemies with powerful spells. If seriously threatened, he takes on his true form, using his shadow flame breath to incinerate anyone who's not properly protected. Every 4 rounds, he uses his corrupted power ability to incapacitate whatever characters he feels are the greatest threat. If badly wounded, Nefarian uses his powerful magic to retreat. If prevented from retreating, he uses his most powerful spells and abilities to turn his enemies against each other, and to drain their health and spells while restoring his own. So he has that shadow flame breath weapon. He has corrupted power, so he can unleash the burst around him, and he chooses a class ability that it affects, that's affected by his particular ability. And if they, whatever he picks, they get this effect. So druids, they polymorph into night saber panthers and can have to attack their allies. Hunters have to serpent sting the wounded in their team. Mages must polymorph their allies, and it can't be dispelled. Necromancers cast death and decay on their allies. Paladins protect Nefarian. Priests heal. Priests, when they try to heal, hurt their allies. Rogues backstab their allies. Scouts attack the spellcasters on their team. Shaman give Wind Fury to Nefarian. Oof. Warlocks summon Infernals for Nefarian. Warriors drop their weapons and then start grappling their allies. Okay. Then he also has a crap ton of Warlock spells, and he has the Shadow Scales that we talked about, Water Breathing, Ring of Protection. And he has a greatsword called Ashkandi, Greatsword of the Brotherhood. Huh. Okay, so that's it. That was our last guy. I was kind of surprised because Nefarian is an N and we were going alphabetically, but apparently he is the last one that we're going to do. All right, so we do have a little bit more in this book, but I think we can bust it out all on the next episode because we're going to just blaze through a lot of technical stuff, and the creatures in the appendices are like bear, dog, cat. So we'll look through that for any flavor text. But this is going to be, it's going to be a wrap after one more episode on this, and then we'll be on to the last book. But hey, guess what? This episode is in the pipe 5x5, just like that. Thank you everybody so much for watching and for listening, and I will see you all next time on Lore of Warcraft.